Hello everyone, Yom Tov, and welcome to today's folk tales and fables. I'm sorry it's a day late. I had a bit of a bad day yesterday, but I'm here now, so let's begin. And I want to say that today's look, which I hope you do like, is courtesy of my wonderful friend Angie, as you know, of 4F Beauty. And because of everything I've been through in the last few weeks and this health scare, she put together a beauty box for me, and she sent me some fantastic makeup. I mean, we're talking about Juvia's Place and what's her name, Anastasia of Beverly Hills, and Tarte, and Too Faced, and stuff like that. Smashbox and Makeup Forever, and just too many things to mention. And I am beyond grateful. And everybody should have a friend like Angie, because she's just, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm getting wonderful support from Haveners. I really, really am. I can't name all of them because, I would accidentally miss one out and that would be heartbreaking. But you know who you are. And all I can say is thank you so much for all the support that you've given me, especially this past fortnight, including up to today. And I do have messages to answer, which I will get to, and I've got comments to answer, which I will get to. I've just found the last few days a little bit overwhelming, that's all. But I promise you, I will get to every one of you. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Angie. Angie, I love you. Everybody should have a friend like you. And I'm blessed to have a friend like you. I really am. And for the rest of you who have sent me lovely messages and been so supportive, if I start talking about you now, I'm going to end up crying, because I'm just overwhelmed by your loving kindness. And the Haven, well, it's home, isn't it? So I'm extremely humbled, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you. So anyway, on to today, the folk tales. You thought I was never going to get there, didn't you? I've received a few messages since I talked about Helen of Troy last week, and I've been asked, would I please talk about Troy? So I looked into it, and I thought, when I went to look for stories, some of them were either very, very childlike, which isn't us, and a lot of them were about the movie Troy and stuff like that. Well, that's no good. That wasn't what I was after. So do you know what? I went to the source, and that means I went to Homer's Iliad, which is all about the story of Troy. Now, this is going to have to be in parts because there's quite a lot of it, but it gives you the background of what was happening in Greece at that time. Now, it doesn't give you a time period, so I'm presuming we're talking about 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. And there's one bit that I do want to tell you. It does speak of slavery in this, so I need to tell you that. I don't know whether it's a bit of a trigger warning or what, but it just proves that in history there have always been, unfortunately, there have always been slaves. And it does talk about slaves in the story of Troy. So I just want to put that out there. If that's something that you find upsetting, then this is not the video for you. But this is history. It's recorded history, and my personal opinion, and it is just my opinion, the best way to look at this is it's history. That was then, this is now. And although we are still fighting slavery today, and people who work for ridiculous wages and terrible conditions, which we're trying to put an end to, I think it gives us an idea, like an eye into the past. So what I want to do is I want to start giving you the background to Troy, and we'll see where we go from there. And you can tell me what you think of it. Okay? Right. Now the story of Troy, the founding of the place Troy, came about when a young man by the name of Ilias, I believe. He was a young prince, and he was from a country called Dardania, which is now like the present day Dardanelles, the Dardanelles Strait in Greece. Now he was from there, and he, as other young princes did, and lords of that time, they went on their travels for about a year or two, before they settled down. And they went round looking at different countries and different provinces and things like that. And one of the first things he did was he travelled to the court of the king of Phrygia. And it says here, this is a country lying east of a place called Troas. So when Ilias arrived at the court of the king of Phrygia, he noticed that there were athletics games taking place. Sorry, excuse me. There were athletic games taking place, and he decided to go and join in a wrestling match. And he actually won the wrestling match, and his prize were 50 young maidens and 50 young men. And it actually says, it's a strange sort of prize, we may think, but not at all strange or unusual in ancient times when there were many slaves everywhere. And as we know, in ancient times that's true, because they were in Egypt, they were in Greece, they were in Rome. It was everywhere. Slaves were everywhere. And a lot of the slaves were from the north. There were slaves captured from Britain, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and what the Greek people did, and the Romans and people from northern Africa would go looking for pale-skinned people because they prized them above their own people. So the majority of slaves that were taken were actually from the Northern Hemisphere way back in the day. So that is recorded history. That is absolutely true. There were no, or very few, slaves who were people of colour. What I do know in recorded history, that in Egypt, the favourite slave to be a god to the pharaohs of Egypt apparently were the Nubians, because they were seen as the most powerful and the most beautiful. So that much I do know. But I don't know everything. Obviously, I'm going to have to pick stuff up as I go. Now, while Ilias was staying in Phrygia, the king gave him a spotted cow, a heifer, and he told him to follow the animal, and he said to him, wherever the animal lies down to rest, you will have that land. You know, you will make a city of your own of that land. So Ilias did this. He went off with the 50 maidens and the 50 young men, and he followed the heifer, and he just let her walk, and she went for miles and miles. And at last she lay down at the foot of Mount Ida, which was in a plain watered by 2 rivers. He then camped for the night, and before going to sleep he prayed to Jupiter to send him a sign that where the heifer had lain down, this was definitely his site to build a city. And in the morning, he found standing in front of his tent a wooden statue of the goddess Minerva, who was also, I believe she was also called Pallas Athena. The figure was 3 cubits high. Now, I don't know how much a cubit is, so I would imagine 3 cubits. I don't know. It might have been about between 6 and 12 foot high, maybe. Not sure. But it was a tall statue, and in one hand it held a spear, and then the other half, the hand, was a distaff, which I think is a kind of staff, and a spindle. So anyway, what he did then was he declared that place, because it was near this place called Troas, and he decided to name it Troy, and that was the founding of the city of Troy. Let's see. I'm trying to make sense, because I don't want to keep reading from that all the time and not paying attention to you. Anyway, Ilias was absolutely convinced that this was the place to start building the city of Troy. So what he then started to do was Troy became the capital of Troas, because that was the land in which it was based. And it became the richest and the most powerful city in the world. And the king of Troas was called Laomedon. Oh no, I'm sorry, that is a huge lie. When Ilias died, his son became a king. Not quite sure how that happened, but he became a king. And he was called Laomedon. And he built these huge walls and everything like that. And he actually dedicated everything to the god Neptune. And apparently the story was that the walls that were built by Neptune all around this city. And Neptune had conspired against Jupiter and had tried to dethrone him to become sort of head god sort of thing. And Jupiter punished him was that he took Neptune's rule of the sea away from him for 1 year. So, and while he wasn't king of the sea for that particular year, he was told he had to serve the king of Troy. So that's a bit of something, isn't it? The god of the sea is made to serve a human being. And apparently Apollo also helped putting the walls around Troy as well. They all, oh goodness me, they all got involved in all of this. So that was that. And then, so while Neptune was bound to serve Laomedon for a year, there was an agreement between them that the god should get a certain reward for building the walls. But when the work was finished, the Trojan king refused to keep his part of the bargain. So Apollo had assisted by his powers of music, and he played tunes that charmed even the huge blocks of stone. So there was a siege on the city, and Neptune got together with Apollo to try and charm the city walls, which is really, really strange. Anyway, there was a bit of a calamity going on, and during this calamity, the king went to an oracle, and he said, how can we fix this? How can we stop Apollo and Neptune trying to wreck the walls of the city? And the oracle said that a Trojan maiden had to be strapped to a rock every year and be offered as an appeasement to a sea monster. And that was the only way that Apollo and Neptune could be appeased. So obviously Laomedon wasn't very happy about that, but that's what he did. So year after year, Laomedon would instruct a young maiden to be strapped to the rock and tied there, and the sea would wash all over her, and then this sea monster would come up and devour her, and that was that. Well, there was no sort of like time limit on this, so it was like year after year after year. You know, it was like, excuse me, Apollonia. Yes, Mum. Is it my turn to do the dishes? No, it's your turn to be strapped to the rock. Okay, Mum, I'll just brush my hair. That sort of thing. I don't think anybody really got much of a choice in it, So, anyway, it got to the point where the only young maiden left was Laomedon's own daughter. And she was called Hesione. And Laomedon was so grief-stricken at the thought, oh my God, my child is going to be strapped to this rock. She's absolutely doomed. But help came along at the last minute, because that's how these things always work. And while he was moaning, about, my daughter's going to be eaten by a sea monster, guess who should turn up but Hercules, who come to visit Troy. And he was on his way home to Greece. After performing, he'd done one of his Herculean tasks in another country, and he was on his way home and what have you. And so what he did was he decided that he was going to destroy, what was it, a monster? It was a sea serpent. And he decided he was going to destroy the sea serpent, rescue the princess from the rock, and as a reward for doing this, Laomedon gave him, what did he give him? Horses that had been given to Laomedon's grandfather, Tros. Tros had a son named Ganymede, and Jupiter admired Ganymede so much they had him carried up to heaven to be a cupbearer to the gods and to serve divine nectar and what have you. But to compensate Tros for the loss of his son, Jupiter gave him 4 magnificent horses who were immortal. And so it was those horses that Hercules said, I'll have them. I've saved the princess. I'll have those horses, please. So, anyway, there was no way he could get out of it. So Laomedon handed over the horses to Hercules. Now, what happened after that? So the king's daughter was saved. All of Troy was saved. And when Hercules said, right, I've saved everybody, I've come in to save the day, I'll have my horses, please. Laomedon decided, no, I've just changed my mind, you're not having them. So Hercules went, oh, okay then, karma. So he left the city and he was thinking, I'm going to come back at a certain time to punish Laomedon. And he did, once he'd completed all, the 12 labours of Hercules. So he completed all of them. And once he'd done that, he got a fleet together and an army. And, let's see. Sorry, this thing keeps jumping all over the place. I don't know why. Sorry about this. I keep trying to get the page to scroll down. So anyway, Hercules collected an army and a fleet. He sailed to the shores of Troas. He marched against the city, he took it by surprise. He killed Laomedon and all of his sons, except Podarces, who was then renamed Priam. And anyway, the horses were given to Hercules. Hercules then restored Priam as king of Troas, and he became king of Troy. And Hesione was carried off to Greece, where she was given in marriage to a guy called Telamon, king of Salamis, who was a friend of Hercules. And Priam reigned over the kingdom of Troas for many years in peace. His wife and queen was called Hecuba, who was the daughter of a Thracian king, and they had 19 children. Their eldest son was called Hector, who was extremely brave. They had a son called Paris, and he was the one who brought about the war, as we know. And that was how the Trojan War came about. Because if you remember from the last time we talked, Paris was the one who, this disenchanted goddess put this golden apple on a table to the fairest, and it was Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, who were all saying, well, it should be me, it should be me, it should be me. And he gave it to Aphrodite because she said, if you give it to me, you can have the most beautiful woman in the world. And of course, this is how he went and got Helen, but that's another story for another day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish it here, and next week I'm going to go more into the story of Troy, because I think it's really interesting. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to organise myself better next week so that I can give you a continuing part of the story of Troy, and then a folk tale from somewhere else in the world. Or, I was thinking of looking at African American folk tales. So next week what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a bit about Troy, and then maybe some African American folk tales, and make it fair. So just in case people who aren't interested in Troy, they can listen to something else. And like I keep saying to you, if you've got a suggestion for a folk tale or a fable, all you have to do is put it in the comments, and I promise you, if I can find it, I will read it. Okay? So on that happy note, I'm going to leave you for now, because you'll have to excuse me, because I'm going to be wearing exactly the same outfit. I've got to do your true crime now. for this week, because I am trying to get back into the swing of getting things organised. So, but don't forget, you know, I've got to keep drinking all the time, and I've got to keep, I've got this stopper, I've got to keep rinsing my mouth out and one thing and another, and I'm still waiting to hear from the hospital, so, but I'll keep you posted, don't worry. And if I do have to disappear from the Haven for a while, I'll just pre-record a load of videos, and then you're not going to lose out. Okay, but I'll still be able to comment, I just won't be able to talk to you, that's all, until all the healing's done. So, anyway, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the first part of our story of Troy. And I do want to thank one of the people who I do remember who asked for this was Carolina. So I want to say thank you, Carolina. And I do hope you've enjoyed this, love. And there'll be more next week. Take care, guys. I do love you. Look after yourselves. And I will see you again very, very soon. Bye for now. Bye.